When I come around, got the whole thing wobbin'.
Hello guys, welcome to MVP Sports. I'm your host, G, and I'm with my good friend and my co-host, Darius.
Hey, what's going on, y'all?
Well, today we got a list of topics. We'll start off with headlines. We got NFC South rankings, our top 10 pass rusher list, the review of the top 100, top free agents available, and their team fits. First off, we'll start off with headlines, obviously. Of date of recording, today is Tuesday, May 15th. And D'Angelo Hall has retired. His career numbers are 43 interceptions, 5 touchdowns, 14 years, known as a Redskin. How do you feel about him?
I feel like D'Angelo Hall's definitely had a great NFL career, me being a Falcons fan, I know that he played with us for a good amount of years, and he was a great player for us. And then, he went over to the Redskins, did his thing. And games that I think about when I think of D'Angelo Hall is when he had that 4 interception game and stuff like that.
Yeah, when Jay Cutler literally sent him to the Pro Bowl that one year and threw 3 to 4 interceptions his way. And my most notable thing, D'Angelo Hall's always been about speed. Mm-hmm. He's always had speed, even almost to the later careers. Playing 14 years, even though his speed has dropped a bit, he's still pretty fast at that age. Yeah. The Redskins try to play him at safety, and I don't think that worked that well because he just didn't fit that mold. There's other players that fit it better, like Charles Woodson was able to play safety at a high level at the end of his career. But D'Angelo Hall I think was just purely a corner, and then his time was eventually up. Yeah. Hall of Famer, because the problem is you're going to have to argue with him with the players he played, like the other cornerbacks he played in the league. You're looking at Champ Bailey. That's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Darrelle Revis.
Charles Woodson, and so on and so forth on the guys he went against. And his career numbers look good. 43 interceptions, that's nothing. And he played a lot longer, especially at the position. Mm-hmm. But he never was really a true number one corner. But he was a very good complementary guy. Yep. Obviously, can keep up with all the fast guys in the NFL. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, great player.
Yeah. Next topic is the Panthers have been sold today. $2.2 billion and being paid in cash. Lord have money, how the rich get richer. On top of that, if the Carolina Panthers themselves are $2.2 billion, can you imagine other teams like notable franchises like the Cowboys? Like Jerry Jones probably won't settle it unless it's $100 billion. The Packers, who's owned technically by the people, because they own stock holders on the team. Yes, there's no true owner to the team, I believe.
I wasn't even aware of that.
And Patriots. Look at that. Now, even though Tom Brady, even if he retires, that's still a 5 Super Bowl winning team, And
Steelers, too.
Even teams in big markets, you got the New York Giants, even Jets, because based on popularity, you're going to get dedicated fans. If the Panthers are being sold for $2.2 billion, God knows what most other teams can be sold for. And this is an expansion team. Mm-hmm. As well too, barely a relatively young team compared to the rest of the league.
So are they still going to be in Carolina or?
Yes, they were. The owner said that he wants to still keep them in, I believe, in Charlotte, where they're still stationed at. Okay. So they're not moving. One of the owners did want to move them to South Carolina.
Oh, okay. I see.
Which wouldn't hurt the team much. You're still the Carolina Panthers because it's not like they're the North Carolina Panthers.
This is true.
And South Carolina still has a big football fan base, but they have a big college football fan base really with Clemson and South Carolina, the Gamecocks. But, the Carolina Panthers are still a relatively successful team. You also inherit a franchise player and a very marketable guy in Cam Newton.
Of course.
So it's good to the owner. $2.2 billion is out of my range of pocket change. But, good for him. And obviously it's, the reason why they're up for sale is due to the Jerry Richardson accusations of him, believe it or not, wanting to shave women's legs.
Oh, wow.
And, all the sexual assault. But it is what it is. But, yeah, other than that, other news, Broncos and the Cowboys have offered DeMarcus Ware a part-time coaching job.
Oh, man. He should definitely take that.
He does look like because he already was a player coach during the 2015 season, I think, during the Super Bowl run. And obviously, Wade Phillips is also he's followed Wade Phillips all around. Wade Phillips also, they're really good friends. And the Cowboys also have offered him the same thing as a pass rushing consultant. That is the official term they have used for that. Meaning he's probably just a pass rushing coach, or not a D-line coach, but like one of those.
Well, if there's anyone who knows something about pass rushing, I think DeMarcus Ware, he knows a thing or two about pass rushing.
Well, he's eighth all time in sacks. Mm-hmm. I don't have the numbers on me of how many sacks he has, but still first ballot Hall of Famer, mostly known as a Cowboy, regardless. Even though he won a Super Bowl with Denver, he is a Cowboy. True and true. And I'm surprised not even Wade Phillips hasn't given him a call there at the Rams to be a coach there, seeing that is his guy, but It is what it is. And that's it for the headlines. Now we'll move to our top 10 list of pass rushers entering next season. We'll start from 10 to 1. I'll go with my number 10 guy, Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue exploded this season, seeing that he's also been on the top 100, which we'll review in a minute. One of the better pass rusher. He has outperformed his teammate, Dante Fowler, who was highly drafted in his class. Mm-hmm. My number 9 guy, DeMarcus Lawrence, had finally came onto the scene and finally performed to where Cowboys fans have expected him. Then I went with Chandler Jones at 8. Now, granted, that's a bit low for a lot of people, having 17 sacks a season.
This guy led the NFL in sacks this year.
Well, every dog has its day. There's probably multiple times in history where a guy has led the league in sacks, and all of a sudden next year has 5. But he's still, now he's in the Arizona Cardinals. Only really the Cardinals know about him, and ex-Patriots fans. But he's not really, and also his sacks really don't really help to his team's success. They were 8-8, and they play in a tough division. Number 7 is Cameron Jordan, Mr. Consistency for the Saints. Mm-hmm. Ever since he's been drafted, he showed up. He's played multiple positions on the defensive line, 3-4, 4-3. He just knows how to get to the pass rusher no matter what. And rounding up my bottom 5, Ryan Kerrigan, also been consistent, very underrated, probably one of the more underrated pass rushers in the game today. Playing on the Redskins, and the Redskins also been known for about their quarterbacks, the team logo, whatever the controversy they may be. Dan Snyder overpaying free agents like Albert Hainsworth and guys like that. But Ryan Kerrigan has had multiple double-digit sack season, has been to multiple Pro Bowls, and ever since he's been drafted by them, has been consistent, has been the main threat on that defense, really. What's your 10 through 6?
Okay, my 10 through 6. Coming in at number 10, a lot of you guys may not know him unless you watched that Atlanta Falcons-Cowboys game. This guy exploded onto the scene with 6 sacks in one game. Finished out the year with 9.5 sacks, pretty good number. He actually just got traded over to the New England Patriots. His name's Adrian Claiborne, if you don't know who that is.
He was a first-round draft pick by Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in the day. Yep. And seemed to have finally played up to something, really, even though granted the Cowboys spotted him 6 sacks in a game.
Yep, I think this guy under Belichick, I think he can definitely do some things. So I'm looking at him coming into next year, and then at number 10. So number 9, I got the man, the myth, the legend, Julius Peppers. Just had 11 sacks last season. This guy's just all time. First ballot Hall of Famer easily. So I got him number 9. Respect to Julius Peppers. Number 8. A lot of people might think this is too high. I mean, not too high, too low for him. Joey Bosa. He had 12.5 sacks last year, 4 forced fumbles. I got him at number 8 because I just look at some other guys that I think have more potential than him. But he's a great, solid pass rusher.
Very young. I think he's going to, for me, if you're going to listen later where I have him ranked, I think he's going to, like, explode. Like, I think he's going to, like, he's a player that I think who can lead multiple years in the league in sacks.
We'll see. Number 7, I have Ryan Kerrigan. Like you said, very consistent player. I've been watching him for a while. Had 13 sacks last year. Leader of that defense. He's just a very good pass rusher. Looking out for him. And number 6 is he had a down year last year, Vic Beasley. But the year before that, he did lead the NFL in sacks. Very good player, Vic Beasley. And I'm looking at him next year. I'm thinking he's going to get back to where he picked up a year ago. And he's going to have a big year this year, I think.
Right. And, I mean, with me and Vic Beasley, it's just the fact of inconsistency issues. The fact that he only exploded for 1 year makes me feel like he was a one-year wonder, and I also expected him to have taken it to another level because last year, I believe, was a down year in sacks because he led the league, and I believe it was under 15, but I believe, for the season or about that number.
Oh, you talking about the year before?
Yeah.
He had 16, I believe.
Well,
16.
yeah, and that's 16 sacks still once a good year, but then he like significantly dropped off. And you think that adding Dontari Poe to that defense to help him, take double teams would have also helped him come out and really help that defense out with the Falcons.
They also were like trying a bunch of new things with Vic Beasley, though. They were trying to put him more in coverages and do stuff like that.
I don't understand that because that's something that the Texans tried to do with Javon Clowney. It was really annoying because it's like you drafted a guy for one purpose and one purpose only, to get the quarterback. Why are you wasting his talent dropping him back in coverage? If he can't, just because he's quick and athletic doesn't mean he can man cover or do zone. Granted, it's cute and all that you can be creative, but at the end of the day, you're just wasting a guy who's arguably your best pass rusher, your best pure go after the quarterback guy, and you're wasting him go drop back in coverage.
Yeah, a lot of these defensive coordinators, they're just trying to get a little cute nowadays. They're trying to, let me drop my best pass rusher back because they won't expect that and stuff like that. But then it ends up backfiring once the QB has all day to throw in the pocket.
Yeah, because most of those times, like if you look at that defense, if you're dropping him, that means you're only rushing 3. And if you're just rushing 3, it would that's 5-on-3 as an offensive lineman. And if you don't have any good penetration or you don't go home on your blitzes, you're just giving quarterbacks, especially in that division. You have Drew Brees, you have Cam Newton, and even sometimes Jameis Winston when he wants to show up. In that division, you don't have time to drop back a guy like Vic Beasley and waste his potential on going into coverage.
Yep. How about your top 5?
Top 5, Justin Houston, also the same. Ever since he's came into the league, he's had a 20-sack season. He's had multiple double-digit season. It's been a very smooth transition for the Chiefs to go from Tamba Hali then to him. And a very underrated. I mean, he was drafted in the 3rd round, mind you, and he's had a tremendous sack season ever since he's came in. Number 4, Everson Griffin for the Vikings. He has been he's been emerging. He's had like a renaissance here. He was a 5-star recruit. He was highly noted. The most notable thing about him is the fact that he was the one who got replaced by Clay Matthews at USC. Clay Matthews was the walk-on, everybody knows this story, and replaces a 5-star guy in Everson Griffin. And both of them has had great seasons, great careers in the NFL. Now, Clay has obviously transitioned to linebacker, doesn't brush the pass rusher as much anymore, but Everson Griffin has now stepped up, undeniably their best defensive lineman on their team. Very good tone setter. Is a very fast defense, too fast and hard-hitting defense they have out there with the Vikings. Number 3, that's where I have Joey Bosa. I think Joey Bosa is going to explode onto the scene next year. I think he's going to be arguably top 5, top 3 in sacks. Granted, without injuries and nothing. And I would hate to be a quarterback in the AFC West. I just listed Justin Houston at 5. Joey Bosa at 3. Then you have Khalil Mack I have at 2. And then number 1, Von Miller.
course.
Can you imagine playing against you play these guys twice a year, one of these guys as a quarterback, and you're just going to get smacked every game. Every game is just going to be giving you hell. With Khalil Mack, who's been amazingly versatile. Now, granted, it was a down year, and especially for the Raiders, because I believe they overperformed with a 13-3 year the year before. And then obviously losing Derek Carr in the playoffs, that was a big hurt. And also Khalil Mack, they kind of outperformed themselves. And then the year afterwards, it was a huge drop-off going 6-10, But still, Khalil Mack, you got to respect him. He demands a double team every game, no matter where you line him up. And Von Miller is just, at the end he's a first ballot Hall of Famer already as is. He's been the tone setter of that defense. He has been extremely athletic. He's a guy that you can put in coverage, and they have used him very well because, one, he's able to take it to the house. He's very good in coverage, very sneaky athletic, and he's also has very good moves to his repertoire as a pass rusher. And your top 5 list.
All right. It's a pretty good list. Mine's a little bit different. We got a few of the same people. So at number 5, I got Cameron Jordan. I watched this guy in the playoffs, and he was just like, no one could block this guy. 13 sacks this year. The guy can line up anywhere. You can put him in the middle. You can put him on the outside. You can put him wherever. Cameron Jordan is
that defense. Ever since he was drafted, we have always heard the Saints defense was like complete garbage until this past season. After when they finally added pieces, but he was never the reason why they were bad. He was always been their hope. They're like shining star in that defense because he's always been consistent, as we've said.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Cameron Jordan, number 5. Number 4, he was hurt all year. I still believe in him, though, the only player in NFL history to get 2 20-sack seasons, J.J. Watt. I got him coming in at number 4 if he can be healthy and, stay out of the training room and stay off of the bike and stay out of the medical room. He can definitely still play, I feel. So I got J.J. Watt number 4.
My thing about J.J. Watt, because we will touch on him on our top 100 review, is I do believe he's a first ballot Hall of Famer already as is. Because, first of all, the only player to do two 20-sack seasons. That's incredible. And then also that one season where you can arguably he should have won MVP.
Should have.
Because he was the main reason why they were winning games, the Texans, that year.
Mm-hmm.
The problem of why I don't have him on this list is the fact that it's back-to-back seasons of injuries. Now, granted, he is not labeled injury concern. That's not what he is now. The problem is he's his own worst enemy. Because obviously the coaches, what it does with about injuries, obviously there's 3 people that are about it. The coach is going to ask the player. He's going to ask the team doctor. And then it's up to the discretion of the player. It's not the coach's fault that he rushed him. It's because if the coach goes up to him and J.J. Watt says, I'm 100%, I'm ready to good to go. And the doctor goes, well, he's medically cleared to play, but I recommend not to. It's like, who do you want to believe? You got a guy who knows his body more than anybody else in J.J. Watt. And J.J. Watt also has to live up to that. I'm the All-American guy. I'm tough as nails. Nothing can stop me. That mantra, and that is who he is. That's his personality. Mm-hmm. But he did hurt himself. He came in way too soon, and from a severe injury too about his back. That could be a career-ending injury. Like J.J. Watt may never, he was lucky that he came back as quickly and didn't severely injure himself. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he set himself back again. If he would have waited and came in halfway through the season, or something like that, he would have done really well for his career health-wise. But he put himself at risk and is a bit selfish of him. But he needs to understand that they do have a replacement into him. It's hard to replace him, but Jadeveon Clowney took his game to another level this season. He solidified his number 1 pick status, and it's as Texans fans, I bet they are so devastated that they have yet to see them both play on the field together. J.J. Watt had an incredible year when Clowney got drafted. Clowney could only play 2 games, and he was injured the whole season. Then, next season, Clowney comes in, plays, has 8 to 9 sacks his season that he finally comes back from injury. J.J. Watt's out for the year. Mm-hmm. J.J. Watt comes back the next year, out again after 2 games.
Yeah, true.
And who's the rest of your list after J.J.?
Number 3, I got Chandler Jones. Respectively, he led the league in sacks this year, 17. So I'm putting him at number 3. And then number 1 and 2, the same as yours. Von Miller, number 1. Khalil Mack, number 2. Those two are just in a class of their own, so you got to respectively put them number 1 and number 2.
Here's a good argument about the pass rusher list. Looking back now, hindsight, Texans at number 1. You think they take Clowney or they take Khalil Mack? Looking at it now. Because Clowney, granted, world-class athlete. First of all, this dude, 6'6", 200 and I believe about 270 when he came into the draft, and he ran a 4.5. That's almost unbelievably God-gifted ability of being that big, that strong, and that fast. But you see Khalil Mack and how versatile he is and how he can work on the defense. How would you think, who would you have picked as the Texans?
Definitely Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack has definitely proven himself more than Jadeveon Clowney has. Clowney's a good player, but he's no Khalil Mack, though, so got to give the edge to him.
Do you think Jadeveon Clowney could touch that level in his career?
I think he could, but so far we haven't seen it yet. We've seen it from Khalil Mack. He's definitely...
And Khalil Mack, the big breakout season is the fact that he did it with not a lot of, in a sense, guys. He didn't... Well, neither did... was it Jadeveon Clowney have a J.J. Watt on his team. But at the same time, there was a Whitney Merciless, there was a Chark McKinney, there was Brian Cushing when he wasn't on PEDs.
Yeah.
He had pieces around him where Khalil Mack literally was... he went to the Pro Bowl as 2 positions. As a linebacker and as a defensive end. Because, 1, he's that athletic that he can almost play Mike. He can play 3-4 outside linebacker. He can play 4-3 outside linebacker. He can play 4-3 defensive end. He's just super versatile. And then, obviously the story about going to Buffalo. And funny enough, I don't know if you heard this about him. You know why he wore the number 46 at Buffalo?
No, I don't.
Because he saw on NCAA that his rating on NCAA was a 46.
Wow.
And he put himself, I'm going to wear the number 46 at Buffalo. And so ever since then, he's had that chip on his shoulder. And speaking of chip on the shoulder, Von Miller, believe it or not, has a tattoo of a chip on his shoulder.
Wow.
Because, first of all, Von Miller was relatively known in the Texas A&M community. But he didn't explode onto the scene until his senior year. And even then, leading up to the draft, Von Miller was like, oh, he's a first-round guy. Borderline first-rounder. All right? Then all of a sudden, he was like, he's a top 20 guy. Then all of a sudden, it was like, now he's a top 10 pick, no doubt about it. He goes to the combine, this dude's not falling after number 3. It was hands down, it was like, and he rose up the draft boards, and even drafting him at number 2 is a steal. Mm-hmm. You drafting a Hall of Famer at number 2 is incredible. But at the same time, if you look at this list, this is a topic maybe for another day of the best ever draft. I can list almost verbatim the top 5, the top 7 picks of the 2011 class. Cam Newton went number 1. He's could be a Hall of Famer once it's all said in stone. First of all, he's Carolina's best ever quarterback. He also took him to a Super Bowl, 15-1 record. Mm-hmm. He's been literally the main part of that offense. Number 2, Von Miller. We already said Hall of Famer. Number 3, Marcel Darius. Has been a good pick. He was good at Buffalo. Was even better at Jacksonville now that they used him appropriately. Number 4, A.J. Green. When he's all set in stone, he will be a Hall of Famer. He's the 3rd best receiver right now in the country.
That's debatable.
That's true. Number 5, Patrick Peterson. Hall of Famer. First of all, the most physically gifted corner I've ever seen. At 6'1", 221 pounds, he run a 4.37 at the combine.
That is pretty crazy.
And you see how fast and big he's been a shutdown corner. And number 6, arguably the best receiver in the game, Julio Jones, went at number 6 and puts up statistical. First of all, physically gifted athlete. If I were to compare Julio Jones to a player that reminds me of him, he is Andre Johnson to me. Andre Johnson, first of all, was the most gifted, not physically gifted, but the most complete, well put together receiver of all time. We're talking 6'3", 220 pounds, strong and as tough as nails. Not only that, personality, quiet as can be, a silent team leader, physically gifted, super fast, soft hands, everything you wanted as a receiver. The Texans just didn't have nobody to throw him the ball, and he was underrated most of his career.
Yeah.
Julio Jones is relatively the same thing. Height, weight, speed combination guy who's 6'3", can jump out of a building, incredible hands, can score a touchdown from 99 yards or at 1 yard right at the goal line. Those are guys. That's a guy who he reminds me a lot.
Oh yeah.
Too of well, and one of the most physically gifted receivers that we have to this day in the game. I mean, we all seen the catches that didn't matter, essentially in the Super Bowl that he made.
Yeah, if only they had someone to throw him the ball in the red zone more, he can definitely get some more touchdowns. They never throw him the ball in the red zone.
That's true, yeah, I think. But we'll go to that later of our rankings. Now we'll do a top 100 review. Now, the top 100 has obviously been a very popular thing since its inception. I believe in 2014 or 13 was the first time that list ever came out. Mm-hmm. And now it's become really popular. Obviously, we don't know what the criteria is other than the players voted themselves. They give them a piece of paper that says list 1 through 10 players on their list.
Yep.
And obviously, if you're on the same team as a player, more than likely you're going to vote for the best player on your team. You're probably going to put them at number 1, number 2, And obviously on this list, Malcolm Jenkins is at 96. That's my first talking point. One, that's way too low for me for Malcolm Jenkins. You're the undisputed team leader of that defense. You're one of the main reasons why that defense helped them carry, in a sense, was able to help not carry them to the Super Bowl, but still be very good enough to take them to the Super Bowl. First of all, they completely shut down the Vikings in the championship game. Made them look like a joke, like they didn't even belong. And Malcolm Jenkins has just been a team leader. He's been very outperformed at 96. Come on now. 4 spots from 100. And on top of that, that's like 5 spots away from being unranked, you know?
Yep.
And obviously we know him completely destroying Brandon Cooks in which really, hurt the Patriots. Mm-hmm. Malcolm Jenkins is, I think, too low. Carlos Hyde, to me, should be unranked. I have no idea why. They must have a lot of fans. The 49ers must have, put him way high on that list. Because, to me, Carlos Hyde is just so inconsistent. He only plays the first, 2 weeks to 4 weeks of the season. Then all of a sudden, he just doesn't play anymore after that.
Carlos Hyde is not really didn't really jump out to me as a top 100
because
player.
he's been in the league for 3 years now, and I don't believe he's only had maybe one 1,000-yard season, and 1,000 yards is not that hard to gain. Now granted, I'm not a running back, I don't play in the NFL, but if you were to average it, how many yards a game you need 62 yards a game. He can't manage to do that. Kirk Cousins is at 94. To me, it's either the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Giants other players must have not liked him at all. And and not 94. Kirk Cousins, ever since he was named the starter at the Redskins, he's thrown for 4,000 yards every year.
Wow.
And granted, now it's been a passing league. Granted, that's the norm, but 4,000 yards is still every year. There's some quarterbacks who can't even do that consistently. And if you look at his weapons that he's had, they're like, oh, well, he's had Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson was not the same as the Eagles' Deshaun Jackson when he came there. Yep. Pierre Garçon also wasn't what he was at the Colts when Peyton Manning made him out to be somebody. And Vernon Davis, yeah, he has him there. Vernon Davis was nowhere near how he was with the 49ers as well, too. Yep. And they have almost little to no running game there and it all goes through them. Now their best weapon is Reed, that tight end they have from Florida, and he's injured every year. He's out for 10 games at least, and so he makes guys like Jamison Crowder and stuff like that look good. And so I think the Vikings got almost a steal, because I'm telling you, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback next year.
You think so?
Because he goes from Jamison Crowder, Vernon Davis, and have little to no other receivers on the team that I can't name, to be honest, because that's how unknown these guys are, to Stephon Diggs, who got listed on this list at 65, and Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, and Dalvin Cook. Instantly better offense, and look at the defense that's behind him as well too. Like most people, and then also Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen led the league in combined yards by a duo and combined touchdowns, and that was with Case Keenum. Now they have a consistent 4,000-yard passer on their team. He may throw for 5,000 easily now.
We'll see. We'll see how that works out for him.
Marshawn Lattimore is a little bit too low to me as well at 82. I think he should be much higher. I think he's a top 50 player. I think he got rated that low due to being a rookie. And as a Falcons fan, you've seen the Saints twice this year. How did you feel about him?
I thought he did really well. There were some people trying to say, oh, he shut down Julio Jones in that first matchup between them, but I beg to differ. He played a good game. He did have an interception, but the ball was a terrible throw straight to him. So but hey, I'm not gonna take credit away from Marshawn Lattimore. Great corner. I've seen him get in the heads of wide receivers. He got into the head of Mike Evans against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's definitely going to be a great corner for them in the future.
He's a very great, in a sense, a good cover corner already as is, but he's more a very good turnover machine. That's one of the things. He puts his team in a very good position in order to turn over the ball, And first of all, turnovers is a great thing. Now, I would like to look up in his touchdown to turnover ratio, because a guy on this list, Marcus Peters, is at 79. The reason, and I don't understand how you could be that low already, and your career numbers are almost through the roof already for a touchdown interception ratio. But the problem is with him is his rookie year he had 8 to 9 interceptions as a rookie. That's some people's career right there.
Yeah.
And but the problem is he almost was one of the receivers that gave up corners that gave up the most touchdowns to receivers. So it was a give or take mentality. He'll get you the interceptions, he'll turn over you the ball, but at the same time, there's going to be guys that are going to go beat him deep and make him look like a fool.
Yeah.
But he has been consistently a great player with interceptions. And with the Rams now adding him, Aqib Talib also to that defense, that defense is going to look scary next year for the rest of the teams in the NFC West.
Yeah, a lot of people scared of the Rams right now.
Yeah, J.J. Watt should be unranked. And I know how highly you think of J.J. Watt. I think his clout, I believe, or his recognition is the reason why he's even at 84. Because, he's still J.J. Watt, stuff like that. I'm sorry, 2 seasons in a row you haven't done anything for me. The players probably out of respect ranked him that high.
Yeah.
But if we're talking top 100 players right now, he's not one of them. Because at 84, after the past 2 seasons, I haven't seen anything. Now, granted, he can easily jump up to number 3 in the list next year. I have no doubt about that.
He does what he's capable of doing.
But we're talking about 2017 season.
2017, he shouldn't be on this. So
yeah.
Neither should Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, there's guys on this list that are there just based off names. I do 100% believe.
Yeah, if you're a superstar, and a lot of superstars got hurt last year, but they're still on the list though. It's just based off of their name.
Yeah. Some people, one of the most controversial ones is Clay Matthews. A lot of people don't like Clay Matthews because people like to rate him too high. And they're like, he's only there because he's what he used to be. And then spill. Everybody knows that mic'd up moment against the Steelers in the Super Bowl.
What spot is Clay Matthews at?
Well, he hasn't been ranked yet, but I've seen a lot of old rankings that a lot of fans think he's overrated.
Oh yeah, definitely. I haven't heard of Clay Matthews doing anything in a while.
Yeah. last but not least, I said expect a lot of Eagles on this list.
Oh, of course, yeah, Super Bowl.
Not only do
champions.
you win a Super Bowl, but you already have 4 players listed, and we're only at 61. We haven't even hit the top half. I mean, the bottom half yet, and you already have 4 Eagles. We have, I believe Alshon Jeffrey is probably going to get on that list. I believe
Aguilar.
No. I mean, I don't think so at all. The argument that you told me was, do you think is Nick Foles going to be on the list?
Nick Foles should be on the list, and he's not even the best quarterback on this team. So that's how you know there's going to be some. Oh, what's the running back's name?
Jay Ajayi.
Jay Ajayi is going to be on there.
Brent Selleck was a bit underrated too, and
Zach Ertz.
No, Zach Ertz, my bad. Zach Ertz was the one that was a bit underrated on this. He was already listed, I believe, in the 80s.
Fletcher Cox.
That's, yes, Fletcher and Zach Ertz back to back. But, and then the highest ranked player is probably going to be Carson Wentz.
Number 1?
Not number 1 overall, but the highest ranked out of the Eagles is going to be him.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's going to be so tough for him because the Eagles fans are one of the most dedicated fan base, and they've not won a Super Bowl ever. And they finally win one, and it's with Nick Foles. And Carson Wentz has to now come in with this team who he took 13-3, pretty much him.
Yep.
And it says, listen, we won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, all right? That means you should win 3 of them easily.
He's definitely got some pressure because, granted, he was having an amazing season until he got hurt, but he was hurt, so he didn't win it, and Nick Foles won it, so he's definitely got some pressure.
And I also believe it's 100% smart that the Eagles kept Nick Foles as a backup. Because, remember, Carson Wentz may not be ready until maybe week 4 in the season, so you might as well keep a guy you won a Super Bowl with and stuff like that. You know, it would. I understand, though, there has been trade rumors, but the only way I'm trading him is if you give me something like a first-round pick for him, something I know Nick Foles isn't really worth. Because I do believe that the play calling was excellent for the Eagles in that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It was and that Patriots defense let them down so hard. Like
Nick Foles had a great. He was great in the playoffs altogether. He shredded that number 1 defense in the Vikings in the playoffs, 38-7.
Yeah, like nothing.
I feel like they could have definitely got some good value for him. Like, if there's any time to trade him, it's like right after that Super Bowl because you can get the most for him right after because he's a Super Bowl MVP. Teams are gonna want this guy. You know, they're gonna be willing to give up, and he's not even your best quarterback, so you could definitely get some good things for. I
think you may see him being traded at the trade deadline. Because at the end of the day, you know, he's still, like, what if this season, right, what if they're undefeated before Carson Wentz comes back with him? then you're going to have a controversy. Who do you start now? Do you keep Nick Foles or do you have Carson Wentz just still wait on the bench?
Carson Wentz is his team. I think they all know that. The city of Philadelphia knows that. They all know it's Carson Wentz's team. So Nick Foles, I think it'd be best, honestly, if they were to just get him out of there and maybe go to a team where he can actually do something.
That is true because there are teams out there that could use a Nick Foles and all that.
A Super Bowl
I
MVP.
believe and also believe 100% that there's going to be a team desperate enough to give up a first and a second round pick for him.
Oh, definitely. There's always going to be a team desperate enough for him.
Then we go off with top free agents available. There's Des Bryant is the big name one, obviously, because you are Dallas. First of all, Dallas loves to overhype their stars a lot, but granted, he deserves the hype. He's Dallas's touchdown leader all time already, and he only played 8 seasons.
And that is a very historically known franchise. So he's kind of a big deal, Des Bryant. He's kind of a big deal.
But the thing is, he's dropped off since Tony Romo's left. Tony Romo loved him. Tony Romo gave him a lot of career yards and everything. But Dak Prescott has just not been gelling well with him at all. You see his completion percentage go down and down as a receiver, which is a stat just as important as quarterback's completing percentage. He's at 49%. Less than 50% chance he's going to catch the ball.
And that is pretty bad.
And then he feels like he's been like screwed over And like we saw the Instagram post, we saw the TMZ post about him where he threw up the deuces and drove off, and he felt smited by the Cowboys. And I think it was a bit wrong of him because he's 8 years in. You know this is a business. You know that you've been having bad years consistently. It's gone worse and worse every year. Your touchdowns gone down. Your yards have gone down. Your completion percentage has gone down. Your catches have gone down. You know they're overpaying you already by $12 million a year. Mm-hmm. Jerry Jones wanted to restructure his contract and be like, hey, man, we want to keep you because we love you. All right? We just don't want to pay you $12 million. He needs to also understand that maybe the Cowboys was his best fit to just stay there and maybe sign a 1-year prove-it deal and prove to the Cowboys, oh, this was just fluky years. But he became, a bit selfish and decided, nah, y'all just trying to screw me over. And now he's going to other teams, and they said there's been reports by Ian Rappaport, I believe, and by the NFL Network that half the league already doesn't want to sign him because he's demanding too much money. Because he said he wants to get paid more. You already were getting top 5 receiver money, and you're performing like a top 200th receiver, Yeah. But teams that I'm looking to need him, I think, first of all, New England. New England is on every veteran's list because they always seem to, pick up. Randy Moss has been known for, even Albert Haynes. Chad Ochocinco was a guy that was on there, too. They like to pick up those types of guys because, listen, the talent is there, obviously. Yeah. It's just willing to work and to see if they can make something out of nothing. And put it this way, the Patriots have used first-round picks to draft traded for guys. They used a second-round pick. They trade for Coney Ely. For the Panthers, they cut him just like that because they know draft picks is just draft picks, Yeah. So why not take a flyer on him? But at the end of the day, it's about how much money does he want. And I think the Panthers would probably be, because he can still be, I still think he has the potential to be a number 1 receiver. I think that's what he is, though. He won't be a slot. And maybe at worst he'll be your number 2, but he needs to go to a team that needs a true number 1. And him and Cam Newton, first of all, you have an established quarterback there. You have a good quarterback who likes to throw the ball deep, and he's a true number 1 receiver, and I think that would be a great fit. Other guys on this list, I have Jonathan Hankins, a defensive lineman. He's a great run stopper. I think the Falcons can use him as a good replacement to Dontari Poe, losing him. Brashad Breeland, cornerback for Washington, underrated. But the biggest concern is he would have already been signed. He just failed multiple physical tests, meaning, and as the public, we don't know what those physicals are. We don't know if it's a heart condition. We don't know if it's a back problem. Because if you haven't been signed yet and you fall, that means it must have been a serious injury that to the point where he can't play. And that's you see it on draft days about certain players like falling down because of a heart condition. Maurice Hurst from Michigan, who's got drafted by the Raiders, he was a first-round pick talent. Dropped all the way to the 5th round, I believe, because of a heart condition. Because some teams feel like he may die on the field, which is crazy to think that stuff like that. And obviously, you see, if he dropped that far, there's a lot of teams' medical reports believe that. But every team doctor is different, Yeah. Navarro Bowman, a great leadership at middle linebacker, team who needs a nice solid linebacker. He's not who he once was. But he's still a great, if your middle linebacker's been hurt, he isn't fill-in guy. Yeah, he's a great stopgap guy. And Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, he's a great Band-Aid cornerback, I believe. He's a guy who can't play slot, but if you have already an established cornerback, I do believe he can play number 2 still to this day.
Yeah, he last made a Pro Bowl in 2015. I think the guy still got a little bit of wheels on him. He can still play, I believe, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie.
Any other guys you want to add to the list that you got on there?
Being from Texas, I got to throw Brian Cushing in there, even though he's, been
suspended.
Been off the scene a little bit with these PEDs and all of that stuff. But, the guy started off as great as you could start for a defensive player. Got Defensive Rookie of the Year. This guy, he started off at a high.
Even though with J.J. Watt was on the team, he was the team leader. He was undisputed the team leader. J.J. Watt is the raw guy. On my face is on every H-E-B commercial here in Texas. I'm on every commercial, Papa John's and all.
Brian Cushing's the headbutt other players with no helmet on type of guy. Though.
I don't take no kind of crap from nobody kind of player.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is the suspension, obviously, with the PEDs that happened. And he's also, ever since the injuries, because he had 2 bad knee injuries of cut blocks that ended, and he's never been able to recover since then. And it's really sad because, like you said, he would have still to this day been a great linebacker. One of a top 10 linebackers, or even top 5, because his upward projection, his first 3 seasons was great. Mm-hmm. And he was, like, when he came in, D'Amico Ryans was the best linebacker there, and he easily, as a rookie, already outshined him. And he was a big defensive piece there.
Mm-hmm. Good squad.
Right. Anybody else outside of Brian Cushing you got on that list?
Well, you already said most of them. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Dez Bryant.
What about Dez? How do you feel about him?
I feel like Dez Bryant, I mean, I know a lot of people have already said the Green Bay Packers, but if I was Dez Bryant, that's where I would want to go because, you know, what's been stirring around in the media a lot, I know he's heard it a lot, is that, oh, he's washed up, he's slowed down, he can't do the same things that he used to do. So if there's any quarterback who can make anybody look good nowadays, who can do that? Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to Green Bay if I'm him, and I'm going to have at least a 1,000-yard, 1,100, 1,200-yard season, you know, let Aaron Rodgers boost my numbers up a little bit. And then pretty much he'll tell everybody, hey, shut up, you know, like I can still play, you know. You guys don't know what you're talking about. I can still play. So that's where I'm going if I'm Dez Bryant. Aaron Rodgers.
And me and you had relatively the same idea. He wants to, I said New England, Tom Brady, established quarterback that has made guys something out of nothing, you know, essentially. Same with the Panthers. You have Cam Newton, an established quarterback. He needs to make a smart business decision and go to a team that has a good, an elite quarterback, not just a good one, an elite guy to help you put you in spots to make great plays. And I think the teams we listed are great choices for him. I mean, obviously, you know, there's teams like Matt Ryan and the Falcons. First of all, you're going to go to a team that's loaded, and they just drafted a receiver, meaning you ain't going to get no touches like that. And, you know, Phillip Rivers, maybe even the Chargers, you know, they also drafted a receiver last year, and Mike Williams, who they're expecting to merge, and Keenan Allen, and stuff like that. I would suggest him to not go to a quarterback that just drafted a rookie and looking for him, because I feel like he wouldn't be the one a rookie would target as much. He needs to go to an established quarterback that knows him, but knows that what he can provide to the team. And also an offensive mind that can put him in great positions in order to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think also leaving Dallas ultimately was maybe a right career move. Maybe he does need to go somewhere else. I know the Dallas Cowboy fans love him, but maybe Dak Prescott, you know, that ain't his quarterback. You know, obviously we have seen that.
Yeah, all his numbers have went down ever since playing with him. So, and it's weird to see why, because he's easily the most talented receiver on the team still. Yeah. Because they have Cole Beasley and I believe Williams on the team, and he's still better than them. He just doesn't get the ball. Jason Witten's as slow as molasses. And
he don't play there no more. He's now an ESPN analyst. He's the Monday night analyst there now. Yeah. But still, like, you know, it's been a big drop off since Dak became the number one. Yeah. And obviously our final topic, we're gonna go week by every time we do a podcast we will do a different division. Today is the NFC South, something you're very familiar with.
Oh yeah, of course.
And at the end, after we do all the divisions, we're gonna do our power rankings as of after draft, before preseason. And then obviously we're going to retouch on these. We're going to do, these predictions aren't set in stone. They're just as of right now. No injury concerns as of right now. This is after the draft, before anything has happened. Injuries are bound to happen. We all know that. And so here we go. The NFC South. We are listening. We're going to list them from best to worst. Who we think the number one team is. We're going to give you their record as of now, their biggest addition, their biggest losses, their most important players, and any other determining factors in why we believe this team is ranked where they're at. I'm going to give you the floor. what's your number one team?
Okay, number one, I got the Atlanta Falcons coming in. They obviously didn't go to the Super Bowl last year. They had a bit of a down year, even though they still won a playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams. Ultimately ended up losing to the Philadelphia Eagles in a close game, a very close game. They didn't get blown out like the Vikings did. They still got most of that Super Bowl run team, though. They still got their quarterback, Matt Ryan. They got Julio Jones, best receiver in football. Their defense actually improved a lot. The defense was somewhat carrying the offense last year in the playoffs. So I'm thinking that the Falcons are going to get it together this year. Really, their offense was struggling. They're under offensive coordinator Sarkisian, and I'm thinking that he's going to get it together, and they're gonna own that division next year.
My biggest problem with them is the fact that they were so inconsistent offensively. They could not find a team identity. It's like you have a lot of toys to play with, and you don't know which one you want to, and you end up playing with whatever you want. Like it's something that's not as fun because you have like Julio Jones, not enough red zone touches. They started running the ball when they shouldn't have sometimes, and then they relied too much on the run. Mm-hmm. They try to be balanced in the sake of being balanced. In some games, not every game you need to be balanced. Not every game is like, I need to throw the ball. We need to pass the ball 50 times and run the ball. We need to pass the ball 40, run the ball 40 times to even it out. No, like, if your game plan, if you see a team has a very bad run defense, run the ball every play. Until it doesn't work. If they have a bad cornerback duo and Julio Jones is going to get his like he does against Tampa Bay. Julio Jones goes off against Tampa Bay. He's had career numbers. I bet when Julio Jones retire, honestly, he could retire just based off the stats he has against Tampa Bay because he just owns them.
And Green Bay, too.
Exactly. So I don't understand how come you just don't give Julio the ball 24/7. Like, you don't pass it to him almost every down in those games. Because that's your greatest strength is him, but then you want to run the ball. Mm-hmm. Obviously run the ball because you want to keep it balanced and stuff like that. But at the same time, don't be balanced just be the sake of being balanced. Yeah. If you have a great weapon, use it.
Oh, yeah. So, for the Falcons, I got them number one. I got them 11-5 next year. Number two, I got the Saints. I got them being 10-6. The Saints, they got a new and improved defense. Their defense came alive last year, and they actually were playing well. We already talked about the rookie cornerback, Marshawn Lattimore. I think he's going to be a stud. Drew Brees is always Drew Brees, and they were literally a play away from being in the NFC Championship. We all know about what happened last year.
And put it this way, granted Marcus Williams gets a lot of, hate and a lot of criticism for what he did. But at the end of the day, you cannot argue it's his fault because you should have put up more points. Because it's like arguing about bad calls by refs. You shouldn't leave it to the refs to determine a game. You shouldn't leave it to one player, especially a rookie, to determine whether you win or lose a game. You need to put your team in a great position to win. Now, granted, the reason why it's so bad is because it was such a bad tackle. Like, it was
or attempt
of a tackle. And the thing is, he's also a rookie. You got to give him, at least some slack on that. And he's playing in one of the biggest moments. He is one play away from going to the championship. Mm-hmm. And, what God knows what we would have done in his position, And I can understand why Saints fans are upset. But at the same time, I think that Saints defense is going to get better and better. And Drew Brees is getting older, and older quarterbacks tend to. We saw with Peyton Manning, he got a noodle arm. He dropped off completely off the map from 5,000-yard season 2 seasons before he won a Super Bowl to literally probably being Brock Osweiler was arguably just as good as he is. And Brock Osweiler got traded away with a second-round pick just to get rid of him off the Texans. And Drew Brees is eventually going to drop off. He's not he can put up 5,000 yards a season QB anymore. He's not that. And I think it's great that the defense is finally emerging because now with that defense, you don't need Drew Brees to throw 31 points a game. to
and they
win
got
you the
that,
game.
and they got the two-headed monster in Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. He really came onto the scene.
Yeah,
too.
and a running game is always great for the quarterback, but the problem is obviously Mark Ingram is also suspended now. But Alvin Kamara, I think, is well capable of carrying the load.
Oh, and they got that wide receiver, Michael Thomas.
Thomas
he's
well
a monster
too.
He's pretty good.
And I mean, Sean Payton has always been an offensive mastermind. I mean, he's made guys like Devery Henderson look good. He's had Ted Ginn on the team now. Adding him from the Carolina Panthers made him look good. Mm-hmm. He had a 1,000-yard receiving season with only 50 catches. You know, he puts him in the best scenario, put him in the best weapons.
Yep.
And it's put him in the best position to win games. And I think Drew Brees, like I said, you don't, and especially in that division where you play against the Falcons, you play against teams that have good quarterbacks, franchise quarterbacks. You need a defense in order to stop them because Drew Brees, being the older guy in the division, you're almost asking too much of him to be like, hey, we need you to win a shootout 6 games a year. Mm-hmm. That's going to take its toll on the guy. And
yeah. So.
And also, the reason why they won a Super Bowl was based on having a great defense. Mm-hmm. And you're lucky that you got, they had Drew Brees in his prime then. But the reason why they were so successful was that defense. But on to your next number 3 team.
Number 3, I got the Carolina Panthers. I got them going 8-8. They're not a bad team by any means, but like you alluded to earlier, NFC South is probably the most competitive division in all of football. You got.
I say it's the hardest division by far because you have teams that you have you already have 3 quarterbacks that have been to a Super Bowl in that division.
Yeah.
You have Drew Brees who's won one. You have Cam Newton who's been there, and so has Matt Ryan on there. You have a bona fide Hall of Famer in the division. You also have Matt Ryan who consistently puts up numbers. And every team's offense is explosive. Jameis Winston and Mike Evans also put up numbers on a given day when they can play. Yep. And so it's even though they may be 8-8 and Panther fans may be upset that it's at 8-8 because their window has been closing ever since that 15-1 season. Mm-hmm. But look at the division. I mean, it is tough to get a game. Yep. Like 8-8 is like that team. If it was any other division, they'd probably be the 1 through 3. I agree with you on this that these teams could be the number 1 team in other divisions right now.
Definitely, that's why all 3 of them last year they had pretty good records. I think it was like
they all had winning records last year.
All went to the top 3 went to the playoffs. So yeah, NFC South is definitely the best division in football right now. And then number 4, obviously I got the Buccaneers. I got them going 6-10. They're not a terrible team, but they're just in a really tough division right now, and I just don't think they're ready yet player wise. They don't have all the pieces that they need.
Their defense is their biggest concern because the biggest great thing that we talked about the Saints was the fact that they had a good defense to help with their quarterback. Jameis Winston is not ready yet to carry that load on the team to be like, hey, Jameis, we need you to win a shootout every single day. The defense, I mean, they need a good defensive line. They haven't had guys like you had your replacement at D tackle with Gerald McCoy, but you have not paired him up with anybody. But as I'm going to get you when I get to my list, they have added some great pieces around him, though. But it's just like you said, when you play in a tough division, there's winners and there's losers. And Tampa Bay arguably is a good team. Like at best they can go 8-8. They can surprise some teams. But you're playing against the Panthers and all these other guys like we have alluded to. And that's just so much talent. Like what are you gonna do with that, I'll run with my list. It's actually the same thing pretty much. Maybe the numbers are a bit differently. Atlanta Falcons, I have them at 12-4. My biggest addition is Calvin Ridley. He instantly is first of all, he's going to be the slot receiver, and he's instantly already one of the better slot receivers in the game just coming off. You get a guy who most people rate as the number 1 wide receiver in the draft, falling to 23. And you have guys, Julio Jones already demands a double team. Mohamed Sanu can get his on any given day. And now you have a guy like Calvin Ridley, and then you have Matt Ryan throwing the ball. It's such a great offense. You're just adding more pieces. You might as well add more pieces to something that's already great. Mm-hmm. And he's also a good future replacement to not Julio, but to Mohamed Sanu and all that stuff. So that way, when Julio Jones eventually deteriorates, you have a young guy in Calvin Ridley to make that smooth transition over the changing of the guard. But that is far from now. That could be almost 5 to 10 years down the line from then on out.
Yep.
Their biggest loss is Dontari Poe. A guy who was... His stats will never show you how good he is because he's a guy who's a double teamer. A guy like Vince Wilfork. Vince Wilfork does known because, one, he's big and fat, and all that and stuff.
And he got a couple interceptions.
Believe it or not, that's crazy. But the thing is that, him being... is Vince Wilfork demanded a double team, and he was a big space eater for other guys to be successful. Mm-hmm. And Dontari Poe was that. You saw that with Vic Beasley emerging and all that, and other players getting a lot of sacks. Mm-hmm. And another biggest addition, I think, is probably going to, maybe outperform Calvin Ridley, but Isaiah Oliver, cornerback drafted out of Colorado. He's a big corner, about 6 foot to 6'1", and he's eventually going to be the number 2, pairing next to Trufant. This may be the next great duo. If Isaiah Oliver does live up, he had a first-round building to some teams. He will, and it's great because you move Alford into a better position that he's more suited to because Alford is a more faster, quicker guy who can play the nickel, I believe, at a very high level. And just like their offense, you have 3 great receivers. You now have 3 good corners. Trufant being the shutdown guy, and he's the one who can follow your number 1 no matter who it is. You have Isaiah Oliver, who's a big physical corner, who can, in that division, a guy like, even Mike Thomas, he can hold on against him. He can go against guys like Devin Funchess, who isn't physically gifted being a slower, bigger receiver. You got a guy, Isaiah Oliver, who could be 6'1", and can pressure him off the line. And any quick, fast guys, you have Alford right there at the nickel, and I think that's a good addition to him. Most important player to me, Matt Ryan. At the end of the day, it goes to the quarterback. Success goes to the quarterback in that offense. Nope. Biggest X factor is Calvin Ridley. I think he can have a great season. He could be Rookie of the Year depending on the stats he puts up. And next, New Orleans Saints. I have them at 10-6. Biggest addition is Marcus Davenport. Granted, he comes from a small school, UTSA, not really much heard of. He came onto the season at the end with a nice sacks. People think he may be a one-hit wonder. But you add him to an already great defense. You put him in there. And if he becomes good, like I said with Calvin Ridley, you give a good, smooth transition. When Cameron Jordan falls off, you have him. You're adding to a strength. You're building on top of a strength that you already need. Because what do the Saints really need, really? Drafting a quarterback doesn't do nothing to help improve your team. Because you already have Drew Brees. You know Drew Brees is going to be the starter. Drafting a quarterback is like, just in case in the future, Mm-hmm. Like, that doesn't help you win games now. Yeah. Unless Drew Brees goes down, now you have a quarterback. Mm-hmm. But their biggest loss is Sino Clemente. He's gone to the Texans now. He's a very versatile offensive lineman. A guy who came in and played at guard, left guard, right guard, left tackle, probably could play at center as well, too. And when injuries were there, he's a guy who's a capable starter and above average backup. A guy who will be a starter at the Texans, but a guy who was relatively unheard of. Only maybe even Saints fans barely know him and stuff like that. Most important players, I think, is the defense in general. I think the defense is the whole reason why Drew Brees is able to still win you games, and because it's like if they keep it a close game, they're telling Drew Brees, you don't need to put up 31 to 35 points just to keep it close. We'll lock them down and hold them to 21 to 17 points a game. And you see the offense, Mike Thomas, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram when he comes back, and especially Peyton as an offensive-minded head coach, he puts all his players in good positions. Mm-hmm. Carolina Panthers 9-7. I have them a little bit higher. I do think they can win more games. I think between the Panthers and the Saints are relatively the same to me. Like, if Drew Brees all of a sudden becomes old, like if his age comes up to him, I can see the Panthers overtaking that.
Okay.
Or what if the Saints' defense is just a one-hit wonder? What if all of a sudden they go back to being the 31st ranked defense in the league?
Mm-hmm.
You know, then the Panthers have the ability to jump them.
Definitely.
The receivers, they still don't have a number one. That's my biggest concern. Is they still drafting DJ Moore? It's like you just drafted another guy who's a good complementary guy, a guy who maybe at best can be a number one, but doesn't really fit that mold. You add Dontari Poe, you take it away from the Falcons. You add another good piece to that defense. And adding Dontari Poe and having a guy like Kawan Short, two guys who automatically take a double team. You know, that's three to four offensive linemen already taken out of 5 guys. You may have to have a tight end just a tip. And we just mentioned Julius Peppers early on. Julius Peppers may have another double-digit sack season again.
Legend.
They also, other additions, DJ Moore, Dontari Poe, Dante Jackson, a guy who was, LSU fans know about him, a great cornerback out of LSU, very physically, very fast, and they still need a replacement to Josh Norman. They have yet to find a good shutdown corner they had in Josh Norman, and letting him go, almost walk for free, it seems like, and I think it was a bad business decision to let them go.
Yep.
Their biggest loss is Kurt Coleman. He was a good defensive leader, very vocal leader. Now, granted, his interceptions have gone down. I believe they went from 7 to 4 to now 0. But at the same time, he was more than just an interception machine. He was a good tackler. He was a good run-defending cornerback and could cover and hold his own. Mm-hmm. But now, losing him, it's still a big loss. Granted, you don't get the interceptions. Most important players are the receivers. I've been saying this all throughout this podcast. They still don't have a number one. Mm-hmm. And Cam Newton, granted, I think that 15-1 season was a bit of a fluke. I don't think they were a 15-1 team. Because if you look at all-time teams, that's almost undefeated. That's an undefeated team. They only lost one game that whole season because they went to the Super Bowl and then lost the Super Bowl. They
lost to the Falcons that year, huh?
I think that was the only time they lost was to the Falcons that year. But still, one game, Mm-hmm. And they didn't win with the number. They had Calvin Benjamin, but he still hasn't proven that he's a true number one. He's just a big body receiver. Mm-hmm. When you're 6'5" and 250 pounds, like not a lot of cornerbacks can touch that at all. And lastly, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 6-10. Their biggest addition has been Jason Pierre-Paul, Vinny Curry, Vita Vea. You just added 3 new pieces to that defensive line next to Gerald McCoy. Jason Pierre-Paul, one, is a physically gifted guy. I remember him in the draft process. He was doing backflips and cartwheels at 6'5", 270 pounds. Now, granted, as physically gifted he isn't that smart because he blew off his hand with a firework. And
this is true.
But even with that, listen, you don't need those fingers in order to sack the pass rusher, as he's proven that. He's still a very good guy, And even he kind of still performed very well there with the Giants. Mm-hmm. And Vinny Curry. A lot of the Eagles fan may know of him, and he may not have a lot of sacks known to his name because he's behind a lot of players on that defense. There was Chris Long, there was Brandon Graham, Timmy Jernigan, Fletcher Cox. All those guys were above him, and you're the 5th guy on the depth chart. It's hardly to get any touches, especially those guys who had career years that year. Well, maybe not Fletcher Cox and Timmy Jernigan, but Brandon Graham finally lived up to his first-round pick. And Vinny Curry, who was a relatively low-drafted guy, now has a chance to be a starter, playing next to Jason Pierre-Paul, Vita Vea, who to me reminded me a lot of Dontari Poe, coming out of he may be fat and big, obviously, but Dontari Poe is way more physically gifted than people give him credit for. There's a reason why the Falcons and the Chiefs put him at fullback and also made him throw a pass because he's actually way more physically gifted than people give him credit for. Vita Vea is within that same mold as him. He's just not a fat guy. He's a guy who can rush the passer and get to the quarterback. Has moves to his repertoire. Very nimble guy being that big. And Ronald Jones adding to the running back They lose. They lose Doug Martin to the Raiders. Doug Martin was already losing. He's going down in career years.
Yeah.
His first 2 seasons he exploded. Muscle hamster and everything like that. But since then he's never touched that status again.
Yeah.
And he's relatively, the reason why the Raiders signed him is, one, he's from the LA area. I understand that, and probably was an Oakland Raider fan. But at the end of the day, I think he's more of a name brand guy. Like, he's more known for his name rather than his performance on the field of recent times. Ronald Jones, fairly highly touted guy out of USC. Biggest loss is none. They didn't really lose anybody. They gained more than they lost. There wasn't a big notable guy that they lost in free agency or injuries or, as of now, or retirement.
Mm-hmm.
But most important player, both me and you can agree to, is Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Listen, you're playing in a division filled with great quarterbacks, multiple Pro Bowl quarterbacks, multiple All-Pros, MVPs, Super Bowl MVPs, multiple MVP winners, and Drew Brees, and Matt Ryan, and
Cam Newton.
And Cam Newton as well, too.
MVP.
And Jameis Winston, has to live up to that first-round overall pick,
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to finally start, being a team leader. Granted, he's being one of the boys, and he's like, oh, I want to eat this W and whatnot. Yeah, you can be cool, but the thing is, he needs to elevate and take his team to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has the skill set and the potential to do that. The problem is just that he's too worried about being cool with the homies. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with having friends. But at the same time, go out there and just put the team on your back and he's a big turnover machine. That's also one of his biggest concerns.
Yeah.
And granted, when you have Mike Evans, who's also a big, physically gifted receiver in the division, you tend to he's 6'5", he can catch anything. Maybe he trusts him a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he needs to elevate his game. And a lot of people had high hopes for Tampa Bay last year. They thought Tampa, because everybody written the Saints off last year. If we were going to do this list entering last season, we probably would have had the Saints probably relatively lower because of that.
4 or 3.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay would have been a bit higher because Jameis Winston, that was his time to step up. It was his time to prove himself that he was a good quarterback.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, there hasn't been any other news that pop up. And as of recording today, the Tuesday the 15th, around 4:30, nothing else important has happened. The only breaking news we got today was Carolina Panthers being sold, which is funny enough that we're talking about the NFC South so much today.
Yep.
So that was good to hear all that. And that's it for now.
All right.
We'll talk to y'all later.